You're listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast, the podcast for communications professionals in the corporate world who are committed to advancing their work and our field's reputation as critical business advisors that are not only invited to the decision-making table, but are required there. I'm your host, Tara McDonagh. Hi, and welcome to this week's episode of the Communications Business Advisor podcast. Today, we're going to talk about an elusive subject, metrics. Whenever I talk about advancing our field as business advisors, I hear from colleagues talking about the need to do better about treating our business area like a business area. And that means metrics that matter to leadership. Now, there are many ways to go about quantitative metrics. If you're in PR, you might be focused on unique views, leads from an article, sentiment, your message being picked up, and much, much, much more. If you're in internal comms, you might focus on engagement, employee awareness of company goals, metrics from the employee engagement survey, which is a topic for another day. Don't even get me started. There's too much to unpack here in one episode, so we won't try to unpack it all today. There's going to be more episodes, no worries. But right now, I'm going to address something that I see missing from communications teams when it comes to metrics. Intentional, consider that intentional word in all caps, qualitative feedback. Now, qualitative feedback gets a bad rap in my view. People see it as fluffy and not something you can quote unquote nail down. But this industry is just as much art as it is science. So don't ignore the science. Don't ignore the data. Data is critical to making improvements, making a case, changing your approach. But the qualitative, the art of it all, that can also direct you to some science that you weren't even aware of. It can be just as powerful, if not more so. After all, the work I'm most proud of is the work that most people will never see. It's the crisis that's prevented. It's the counsel that goes into shifting a business decision to achieve the same goal, but to do it with less of a public or employee fight on their hands. And I'm sure the same is true for you. So how can we prove the value of what we do if it's designed so that no one ever sees it? We must have qualitative feedback to run alongside the quantitative. Now, to be clear, when I talk about qualitative feedback, I am not talking about the feedback that you happen to get from someone that's useful to know and potentially share. I'm talking about an intentional, focused effort to seek this feedback, quality feedback. So how do we do this? We ask about the impact. One of the biggest misses I see with communications teams is that they rarely or never ask about the impact of the work that they're doing right after a major activity. It could be the end of a major campaign. It could be after a crisis is prevented, in large part due to your counsel. It could be after an article is posted that you've worked on with a reporter. Now, to be clear, I'm not talking about asking people in a format like a survey email that goes out after a town hall. This is very different. Whatever the situation, instead of telling business areas about the impact, ask them about the impact. But instead of communicators taking this approach, I see one of two things happening. Now, the first is communicators move on from whatever they did, silently celebrating and assuming everyone knows the effort and the impact that they had. They're ridiculously busy after all, and talking about the impact of work feels self-promotional, which we, especially the women among us, are told is a bad look for us, and it feels inauthentic. They know our impact, we know our impact, it's time to move on, right? Wrong. If you take this approach, you're way behind. And frankly, I'm worried for you. I'm worried about your budget, your staffing model, and your growth at the company. Prepare yourself to be shocked. Shocked at how little the leadership team knows about what you do. Seriously, you think that they get it. They don't. I will bet my bottom dollar on it. How do I know this? It's proven time and again. When I go in to work with a communications leader to partner with them on their long-term strategic plan, one of the key components in my approach is talking with leadership Together, along with the communications leader, we meet with each leader in a dedicated, specifically focused session. And as we talk, the communications leader and I both hear just how little they actually know about what the communicator's roles are, what they've done in the recent past, often directly impacting their team or their business area. And the communicator is inevitably frustrated. By the way, this also speaks to people who work directly with those leaders on a regular basis. It doesn't matter. They don't know. Now, communication leaders, they can understand a leader not knowing what you do for another business area, but not understanding what you did for their business area. How is that even possible? But it is. It is, my friends. If you're not in constant campaign mode for your business area, there's a major gap in awareness, and in the gaps, stories are made up. Stories that don't include the major role you played in preventing a crisis that would have impacted operations and finances. Stories that focus on their limited awareness of your work. You become some elusive function that's helpful when asked to do something, but not essential to the company. Scary stuff. If this is you, get on top of it immediately. For you, your team, your company, and the rest of your business. You risk budget cuts, burnout, staff reductions, and not getting promoted if you don't address it. Now, I'll be right back in a minute to talk about the second thing that I see related to metrics. The Communications Business Advisor podcast is brought to you by Raise the Tide, the program for women communications leaders and emerging leaders working in the corporate environment. Raise the Tide is part community, part coaching, part professional development, and part mentorship. The program advances women in their careers and activates these trailblazers to advance our vision of a corporate world that not only invites communications leaders to act as critical advisors, but expects them to. A rising tide raises all ships, but we're not the ships. Together, we're the force of the tide raising the ships for our entire industry. For more information, visit www.raisethetide.net. Okay. So the second thing I see when it comes to metrics is that communicators will package together the impact of their work using whatever metrics they have access to, and then they share a roundup summary of the work and the impact that it had. So for example, after replacing a story, a PR person worked on with a reporter for several months, let's say, an email goes out to the people that care within the company, sharing the story and telling them, we reached 10,000 people through this publication whose readers are ideal prospects for our company. Great job to Sarah, who worked on the story with this reporter for the past several months. And thanks to Joe, Tom, and Carrie from Product and Sales, who provided essential insight that shaped the article. Okay. All right. That's good stuff. Except if you take this approach, you're missing a major opportunity. Instead of wrapping up the impact of the work in a pretty bow and sharing it in a self-congratulatory email masquerading as informing your leaders and congratulating your peers or your team about the work, which is important, before you do that, talk to the people who might care. How? You intentionally approach them in a conversation. Pick up the phone. I know. For many of you who are phone averse, I'm sorry. I genuinely am. I don't want to force you to do this. But I do find that the phone works way better in this scenario because you might learn something you otherwise might miss if you didn't have a conversation about it. Here's how to do it. Let's say you're calling up Tom, who's the head of sales, about a new product launch you just got some major positive media coverage for. So you call him up. Hey, Tom, I'm evaluating the impact of the campaign for the product launch we just ran and trying to gather some insight on all of this. Trying to gather some insight on its impact and figure out what we could do differently to make it even more impactful next time. Note that's an important part because you're basically saying, I'm not looking for you just to tell me how wonderful I and my team are. I also want to know what I can do to improve. That's a growth mindset thing that leaders love to see. And also, it's really important to make sure that you're continuously growing and evolving in your function. Okay, back to talking to Tom. So let Tom know, you can say, I want to get your thoughts on this along with a few others. So what are you seeing? Then you start asking specifics to Tom. Did your team mention anyone referencing the article? Did you see any inbound sales calls as a result of it? Do you think it made your team's outbound sales calls easier? Warmer leads? How? Was there anything else surprising? Anything else you'd like to share? Thanks, Tom. I'm getting feedback from Judy and Sue, and we're going to send out a note wrapping all of this up so we can revisit it for next time and ensure everyone's on the same page about the results from the campaign. You've been a great partner on this. Thanks so much. And done. What kind of qualitative feedback might you get on your work that's useful to make the case that communications and PR is an essential function that makes an impact on business goals? One client told me that she now always asks for feedback from a spokesperson after an article is placed. Why? Because she learned that in one article, she'd been working on positioning her company as an innovator in a great unknown tech company. When the article was placed, it piqued the interest of top tech talent, and it resulted in some strong new job applicants for the roles that were incredibly difficult to fill. But the thing is, she had to ask the company spokesperson quoted in the article about the impact to learn it. And now it's part of her and her team's checklist to always ask a spokesperson or a business leader following a big campaign or a major article about the impact. Think about the recruiting dollars saved. Think about the addition of that top tech talent to her company. That's a pretty powerful number. So a qualitative piece of feedback can lead to a quantitative piece of feedback. Now, for me, I remember working on a massive cross-functional campaign at a former job when I was leading crisis comms. And this was connected to preventing a crisis. Now, let me tell you, it is really hard to motivate a cross-functional team of like 40 to 70 people in different functions that you're leading who don't report to you. Can you imagine that? The goal is to hopefully never allow the work to see the light of day. Try motivating that crew. We're preparing for something that we hoped would never happen, but if we weren't prepared, it would have meant massive financial, operational, and reputational challenges for the company. When it was complete and the potential crisis was averted, I called up the top executive leading the initiative from a financial and operational impact point of view. And I asked him if the communications work we did was helpful and impactful from his point of view. He then shared back with me that because of communications preparedness, he was able to get favorable contract terms. The contract saved the company millions of dollars. I'm talking more than tens of millions of dollars. And he went on to attribute communications preparedness and counsel as a major reason for him and his team's success. That is a powerful piece of qualitative feedback to share with a cross-functional team to keep them motivated. And it's an even more powerful piece of feedback to put in your performance review and in your budget requesting investment in your business area. And the thing is, I wouldn't have received that feedback if I didn't ask. This isn't about playing politics. It's not about being type A. It's about doing your work. Now I'm going to attack the dirty word many of you hear head on. Self-promotional. Did you cringe when I said that? When did we decide that being self-promotional is a bad thing? I'm sure it's deeply embedded in our psyches. I know for women, we learn early on to always shine the light on others, never ourselves. To be comfortable playing the best friend, but never the leading lady. And that translates in all we do, including our careers. And in a field dominated by women, you better believe it impacts our field and us individually. That noted, self-promotion can't be done in an inauthentic, look at me, aren't I wonderful way. People hate that. I mean, I hate that, especially when women do it because both women and men have learned that this is not a good look for women. Plus, it makes us wildly uncomfortable when we do it. So how do we self-promote without being all, I'm the best, look at me, look at me? We change our perspective on it and our approach. We find a way of sharing information that company leadership needs to hear, that our teams need for us to share so that we can help them get the resources that they need. And change our perspective because our field needs to continue to advance as a business function, not a nice to have. Now, it may feel like it's all about you, but it's bigger than that. It's an act of service to others, just as it is to yourself. So put your campaign skills to work for yourself, for your team, and for your field. Go seek your qualitative feedback and let me know how it goes. Now, if you're looking for more on metrics and measurement, you'll get it. We're going to do another episode soon with a corporate communications guest. And I've gotten some questions from you listeners that I can share with her. So keep an eye out, or an ear in this case. Until next time, this is the Communications Business Advisor podcast. Keep being the business advisor you are, and give us a like or a review. It helps people find us, and we can start a movement when we spread the message. Bye all. If you're interested in working with me to advance your work and your team's reputation as critical business advisors, never order takers, check out Tara at taramcdonagh.com. Thanks for listening to the Communications Business Advisor podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please leave a rating or a review. It helps people find us, and we can't ignite a movement without sharing the message. See you next time, where we'll continue to do the work to elevate our field's reputation and elevate the careers of the people in it.